All right, and I think that that means that we are finally live. Hello, I'm Drex. I'm going to be your host this evening. Um, so this is kind of a special little live stream here because, of course, we're in the middle of the Olympic Games, and the question of flow arts competitions is something that comes up from time to time in the online groups, just in general. And it is one of those things that, especially now that we have had some people from our community and even some poi spinning itself in the Olympic Games, in the opening ceremonies, what would it look like to make poi a competition and possibly even have it be in the Olympics? It's an interesting question, and I've done a little bit of research into it. And I don't think that we're going to have an answer by the time that I'm done here, but I think it is interesting to ponder these questions and see where we can go with them. I'm going to start off tonight by first telling you guys that there's basically two things you need to know about where I'm coming from mentally this evening, which is that I've just wrapped up doing Toy Fair with spin balls over the weekend, which is an awesome gig, but it is also the single most intense gig that I do every year because it is a business trade show, and I'm not just performing there, but I have to, get a lot of kind of jaded industry types interested in putting poi in their toy stores and everything. So you have to be on in a major kind of way, and that was like 3 or 4 days. And so at this point, I am pretty exhausted, but I did want to get on and do a live stream this week if I could. Item number 2, and I am going to open this up to a general Q&A later on in the chat after I finish talking about the Olympics and competitions and everything. I'm more than happy to take general questions about poi and flow arts in general. A lot of people might have questions about how to do specific poi tricks, and I'm a little hamstrung on that. I might be able to do a little bit of poi spinning, but unfortunately, I'm kind of injured right now. Last Thursday, I was washing out a glass in the sink, and it shattered in my hand, and I wound up cutting my thumb very badly. I nicked an artery, and my wonderful girlfriend had to drive me immediately to urgent care and had me stitched up and everything. And the good news is that the wound is closed. I'm not in any danger of opening it back up again, but the problem I'm dealing with now is that I have pretty bad tendinitis in my right thumb because I basically didn't move my thumb for several days. So I'm in the process of getting my mobility back into it. I can still spin poi, but I can generally only spin for a few minutes before I start getting really sharp pains in my thumb. So in the interest of recovery and answering y'all's questions, I am probably going to go towards the edge of caution rather than demonstrating everything I possibly can, and I hope you guys will forgive me for that. I'm seeing a bunch of you guys are on right now. Ahala. Wow, that's aha, that's it. Hello, and My Awkward Life, hello. GamerVet, just here just to say hi. Thank you, you've got me so much in poi. I'm very glad to hear it. Aha says, oh my god, get well soon. That is totally the plan, and that's why I'm going to take it easy tonight. I will take poi questions, but I might not be able to demonstrate everything. I'm just going to say that up front. But I am still happy to take the questions. But first, let's talk about competition, and that inevitably leads down the road to the Olympics, because pretty much everybody who does competitions at some point, the Olympics come into that conversation. So there's really kind of like two questions buried inside of that, which is, can poi and flow arts become an Olympic sport, and should they become an Olympic sport? They're two very, very different questions, and there's going to be a lot of people that have very strong opinions on both sides of those questions. When it comes to the should part of things, I mean, I'm basing it off of my own personal opinions just as much as everybody else does. So if your own personal opinions are different, that's cool. We can agree to disagree on some stuff, or maybe you have an argument that I had never thought of, and I'm totally happy to hear it. But by and large, I think competitions would not be a bad thing for the flow arts. I think that history has shown us time and time again that competitions are incentives for people to really up their game, to really push forward in ways that they wouldn't be able to if they weren't incentivized in a similar kind of manner. I feel like in terms of flow arts getting bigger, there's kind of two schools of thoughts on this. One school of thought says that the way to get there is through competition, and one school of thought is to get there through promotion, like kind of Cirque du Soleil or circus style events. And I know that people kind of have each have their own dogs in that fight, and that's cool. I have been on both sides of that at various points. I have played through the kind of performance side of it, and I've played through the kind of competition side of it. And I think both have good things that they bring to the table. And it's not like it has to be an either-or proposition. But I think ultimately the goal that we all have is to bring the flow arts to a bigger audience and to create a culture in which flow artists are able to make a reasonable living doing what they want to do, to be able to dedicate themselves to pushing their art as far as they want to, which currently we don't have a system that is built very well to allow people to do that, at least not in very large numbers. There, of course, are definitely people that do flow arts full-time and are able to make a living doing it, but they are also very much hamstrung by the fact that the available pool of money to support people doing flow arts full-time is quite small, and thus it is very competitive, and it is something that only a very, very limited number of people can get engaged in any given time. So both the performance side of things and the competition side of things come at it from trying to say, hey, we want to be able to open this up to more people, and I think that that is good. I think that that overall goal is a good one. And I think that, again, there's no right answer there. That like both can have important pieces of that puzzle. Now, all of that said, and I don't pretend to be a business analyst by any means, but from what I have seen, by and large, the live performance world is it's not doing so hot right now. Whether it be dance concerts or theater or even circus shows. We've seen a bunch of different circus companies close down in the past few years, and at least here in DC, we've seen a very, very, very difficult time for a lot of dance companies, and some dance companies have shut down, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other major cities. Symphonies are facing bankruptcy. Theater shows, like by and large, you have to be pretty big in order to turn any kind of profit on a play. So it's really, really ugly out there for live performance. And I haven't taken as much of a look at competition world, but it seems as though, like with the Olympic Games and things like that, that the competition world is still very healthy from a business standpoint. There's still a lot of businesses that want a funnel of professional athletes that they can get to endorse products and become spokespeople and the like. Which granted, that can happen in the art world too. Misty Copeland has certainly shown that a appropriately charismatic performer can definitely make waves in the live performance world. It's totally possible. It's totally possible. But as of now, no flow artist has quite figured out how to do that. And it's not to say that it'll never happen, but just playing the numbers game, I think it is easier for us to get a few dozen professional competitive poi spinners than it is a few dozen Misty Copelands, if that makes any kind of sense. And I'm also very firmly of the mind that if you find something that you enjoy and that enriches your life, that you kind of have an obligation and a responsibility for it to be passed on to other people, to help other people find something that they're going to love and enjoy. So that's on the should side. And again, I know that there are lots of people out there who are super duper anti-competition and see it antithetical to the flow arts world, and I get it. I totally do. It is going to bring a lot of people into our world that may not share a lot of the values that we have held on to for quite a number of years now. And it's also going to turn it into something that is a different species than what we're used to, or at least a slightly different species. I personally feel as though competition has been a big part of the poi world for a long time. I feel as though, especially in the tech poi world, people have been very competitive with each other since I've been spinning, and I've been spinning since 2007, and I know that it goes back further than that. So with the kind of philosophical part of it out of the way, the question that follows is, how does that happen? And we're actually, witnessing part of that happening right now with skateboarding, which I just discovered is going to be in the 2012 Olympic Games in Tokyo, the Summer Games, or 2020, excuse me, which is totally awesome because, skateboarding has been around for decades and it's an older sport than snowboarding. So it's cool that it is being given its due, and you can definitely argue that, both skateboarding and snowboarding represent similar kind of intersections of, virtuosic skill with an object to what we do with poi spinning or hooping or any of that, right? And it also shows us a path to how we could do it. The biggest thing that has to happen is there would have to be an organization created that would govern a sport of competitive flow arts. Now, I see a couple of you guys out there talking about rhythmic gymnastics, and I do want to address that. Actually, I'm going to address that right now. So yes, rhythmic gymnastics is a thing, and hooping is a part of it, and so is club swinging. There are some people that do club swinging in rhythmic gymnastics. But it doesn't bear a very close resemblance to flow arts as we currently practice it. At least to my eyes, it appears more like gymnastics with decoration, if that makes any kind of sense. I have seen Olympic athletes doing rhythmic gymnastics with hoop and clubs, and most of what it consists of is some stuff that we would consider to be extraordinarily basic tricks with both the clubs and with the hoops, but it is done in conjunction with some extraordinarily athletic body prowess. The one exception to that, of course, is throws. Like, there are a lot of extremely athletic throws that are done with both clubs and hoop. And I think to a certain extent, we're kind of, I see those things happening in the hoop and poi world at least a little bit, or the hoop and club world a little bit, that they're kind of moving closer together. I think that it is close to what we are looking for, but it's not quite dead on. Because to me, what makes flow arts special is the desire to have a virtuosic skill with a prop. The prop is really primary, and I think the body becomes secondary. And I think that leads to a lot of problems with flow arts too, to be honest with you. I think that leads to a lot of lackluster performance and an overabundance of focus on the prop over the body. Rhythmic gymnastics to me is like literally the other end of the spectrum, where the focus is on the virtuosity of the body, and almost no focus on the virtuosity of the prop. And I think that, that's great for rhythmic gymnasts, but I also don't see it as really reflecting what happens in our world. I will also like just stick in a bookmark at this point and mention that club swinging, as we currently understand it, actually used to be an Olympic sport way back when they relaunched the modern Olympic Games back at the turn of the century. Um, Back then, it was known by the somewhat less politically correct name of Indian clubs, because reasons. But we have plenty of records of people doing club swinging as a competitive sport back then. But then in the mid 20th century, the Olympics kind of shifted their focus from individual sports to team sports, like basketball and baseball and tennis and all that became much more important to the Olympic Games. And now we're starting to see the pendulum swinging back the other way with skateboarding and snowboarding and all that coming into the games. And the resurgence of skeleton. Skeleton wasn't an Olympic sport for quite some time. So there's absolutely hope. There are things that look similar to what we do or are exactly the same thing that we do that either are or have been part of the Olympic Games in the past. So running back to the question of how do we get there then? The first step for any sport is to come up with basically an international federation, a governing body that governs the sport. What do? They set the rules of competition and they put together events where people compete. Basically, this means that there would have to be an organization that was set up specifically with the mission of creating flow arts competitions and creating the rules around them. I know that a lot of people are like really hung up on, well, how would you score this? And I think they're kind of missing the forest for the trees. That happens after you have kind of made the decision that this is going to be a thing. This is going to be a thing that people do and a competition that people engage in and all that. And then you work on creating the competitions and how to judge it and everything. And that doesn't mean that you get it perfectly. I don't know if a lot of you guys follow figure skating, but figure skating right now is in the middle of some kind of, it's in the middle of some growing pains because figure skating traditionally has rewarded the artistic over the athletic. And they switched the scoring system a number of years ago to more emphasize the athletic. And now there are a number of figure skaters coming up who, a lot of observers are looking at them and saying, yeah, they can do some really, really difficult stuff, but at the same time, they don't look pretty doing it. And at least in figure skating, it's very important to people to be able to maintain a balance between those two things. And I think that that is a great test case for us as well, because the balance between virtuosity and art is absolutely something that we're going to wrestle with too. So I think the answer for that is you look to other sports that are similar to what we do, look at what works in their scoring systems and what doesn't, and figure out how we can learn from those lessons. So you got your international federation for this sport, and they are putting on competitions and setting rules and everything. And basically, when they reach a certain kind of critical mass, they can petition the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, for inclusion in an Olympic game. Now, there's some shortcuts here in that the rules that govern how Olympic sports are added to the Olympics have recently changed so that the sports that are local to whichever cities they're going to host the Olympic Games in are able to suggest sports that are unique to those locales. For example, in Japan, they had tried to get sumo added to the 2020 games. They didn't quite get there, but they had a fighting chance at it. So I think that that's another route to it. If we have an upcoming Olympic Games in the United States, and we can develop at least a domestic sporting federation here in the United States, that would be one possible way that we could get at, right? So, let me get through my notes here. The things that help us get into the Olympic Games. You know, number one, we need to have a good number of participants because it kind of sucks to have an Olympic Games where only one country is sending athletes and it's like 10 of them, right? That doesn't really work. Number two, and this is something that the IOC doesn't really want to admit is a big part of how they select sports, but it is. It has to be sexy. Advertisers have to want a piece of it. It has to be something that people want to run ads next to. I think this is one of the big reasons why snowboarding made it into the Olympic Games and why skateboarding is now making it in. Because it's popular with the younger crowd, and you can throw TV ads on when you air it on the Olympics. You can air it on TV and everything. And, you know, ad dollars translate into more popular Olympic Games, translate into yay, right? So those that basically is our to-do list here. Is we have to create a organizing body to run competitions. We have to either have that sporting body be international and have competitions all over the world, or have them just here in the United States, and either petition the IOC generally, or the next time there's an Olympic Games in the United States. We have to make sure that flow arts as a sport has a good number of participants and is sexy enough to attract ad dollars. And we have to we have to not shatter ourselves in the process of doing all that. Of course, there are some other possibilities that are a little less strenuous, such as like, you know, getting accepted into the X Games or something like that. The X Games are like nipping at the Olympics' heels right now, and they know it, where, you know, the viewership for the X Games is quite high, and we're a pretty natural fit for the X Games, especially if, you know, we're doing flow arts on fire, for example. It's very edgy. It is, you know, something that a younger crowd's going to get drawn to, so why not? So yeah, that is kind of, in broad strokes, how we could get into the Olympics. A test case by Drex Factor Poi. And I know a lot of you guys have been leaving comments, so let me sort through some of those comments right quick. And then, what am I doing on time here? Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Cool. And feel free to start throwing questions at me, and I will answer them as soon as I am through all of these comments here. Ash and Fire asks, when the Poi be similar to rhythmic gymnastics? Yes. So here's the very biggest reason why it would be incredibly unlikely why Poi would ever be a part of rhythmic gymnastics. You will note that every single tool used in rhythmic gymnastics, whether it's ribbons or clubs or hoops, is all what we would refer to as static props, as rigid props, right? The reason for that being that rigid props are a lot easier to make work with very athletic movements of the human body. Non-rigid props such as Poi, rope dart, and meteor are extraordinarily difficult to make work with that same kind of body athleticism. This is one of the reasons why Poi spinners, by and large, tend not to be terribly accomplished dancers, because dancing with Poi is extremely difficult. In most forms of dancing, there's the capacity to be able to stop your body in particular shapes. They're called suspensions. Suspensions do not exist in Poi, nor any other non-rigid prop. So I think the likelihood of Poi being integrated into rhythmic gymnastics is very hard, because it basically requires the body to not be doing that much work. That said, there's a lot of work to be done on getting the body engaged in Poi, and there are a lot of really awesome dancers, especially on Instagram right now. They're doing a fantastic job of integrating the two. Smoke and Stardust from South Africa, Ty Rochford from Florida, Jesse Spin from Australia. There are a lot of really, really good dancey flow artists out there, so you should go check them out. And I think, you know, all of them are doing extraordinary work right now. So subscribe to those folks on Instagram and support the work they're doing. Aha says, for it to be an Olympic sport, it needs to be recognized as a sport, isn't it? Yeah, that's where putting together the governing body comes in. That literally is the first step. Do not pass go. If a sporting federation around flow arts doesn't exist, then we don't get there at all. Yeah, cool. Says, I won't be surprised if drone racing is in the Olympics. I actually would be, because drone racing is really interesting competitive style, but at the same time there's no athleticism to it at all. And the IOC has shown a distaste for things that they consider to be lacking in athletic quality. Some examples, they've been trying to get chess in the Olympics, and the IOC time after time has been like, no, we are not going to have chess in the Olympic Games. Some other examples include ballroom dancing. They've been trying to get ballroom dancing in the Olympics forever and a day, and they always come back and say that it's not athletic enough, it is more of an artistic pursuit than it is a athletic pursuit. Ballroom dancers vehemently disagree, but the IOC just hasn't been willing to go there yet. So yeah, I would be shocked if drone racing made it into the Olympics. Although, hey, who knows? Time will tell. Says, what would be the best way to get more awareness for flow arts? I think competitions would be a good way of doing it. Like I said, competitions are an extraordinarily good way of building incentives to get more people involved in a particular thing. And also, it creates heroes for people to look up to. And I know this is another one of those things that we as flow artists tend to be kind of uncomfortable with, is like, we're not supposed to have egos. We're not supposed to, like, think about it in terms of, like, oh, who's the best or who's at the top of the heap and everything. But having those people for others to kind of, like, look up to and aspire to be really makes a huge difference in getting people into a pursuit. Like, if it were not for figures like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and everything, we wouldn't have had an entire generation of super talented software engineers creating unbelievably cool products on the internet, like Facebook and Instagram and all that. They wouldn't exist, I guarantee it. So having those figures to look up to, I think, is a big part of it. Competition's a big part of it. I think on the performance side of things, if flow arts performances were more common, and honestly too, if there was a spin jam in literally every local park, I think that it wouldn't be terrible. I think that awareness of flow arts would spread incredibly fast. But it involves us kind of like crawling out of our studios and making ourselves known to the wider world and being visible. Being visible is a big part of it. Yeah. My Awkward Life says, basically all I can do is just tell as many people about it as I can. Yes, and show it. Like, go be in places where you're visible and go spin a lot and get people interested in it. My Awkward Life, I would love to see sumo in the Olympics. That would be really fun. I'm almost positive the reason they said no is because Japan would be the only... Japan would be the only country sending very many athletes for that. My Awkward Life, I personally think flow arts is very sexy. I think so too. It's just a matter of convincing advertisers of that. Mike Whitting says, I think it's about getting general awareness in your areas. I do poi whenever able to in public. Yes! And we got to create a better awareness for it. Matt Whitting, you are on the right track there, sir. Keep up the good work. And actually, I'm going to tell you, Matt, what you ought to do is, like, document your success. Like, create a blog posting or record a video talking about how you do this and how you get more people engaged in flow arts in your area, and publish that and post that and get the word out there. The more people we have exchanging ideas on this, the better. Ryan Olson says, most Olympic sport had a strong competition base before they were selected. Maybe a national poi competition is a step in the right direction. Absolutely, it's a step in the right direction. I'm also going to talk about something that is in my notes, and I still totally forgot to talk about as I was as I was going through this, and that's that we've seen some small-scale competitions already in the flow arts, but they tend not to be terribly well run, and the stakes for winners tend to be not terribly high. There's a competition in the United States this year at an event called Equilibrium that I'm very excited to see how it's going to turn out. It has some decent prize money attached to it, so I think it will be it will put behind it the proper motivation for people to come out and be a part of it and everything. And I'm going to be there, and I can't wait to see how they do it and what goes well and what doesn't go well, and how we can take the good ideas that they have and take them to other parts of the country and the world. I think that they're onto the right track, and this is a great first step. Yeah. So yes, Ryan Olson, I totally agree with you. My Awkward Life. Drex, have you heard of the Amino app? It is a place for people with common interests to get together, chat, and share stuff. I made a Flow Arts Amino page, but nobody will join. Can I link it? Sure, go ahead. Yeah, so that sounds a lot like the Meetup app to me as well, which, like, there have been solutions for people to get together with common interests for a while now. And I think that, I think competitions are a way that we can, make it slightly more likely that people are going to show up to these things. Because, I've run several Poi-based meetups in Washington, D.C., and keeping them going is always very, very difficult because people are super interested when you start it, and then interest kind of like declines over time. So yeah, just something to think about. But yeah, I think using apps like that are a great way to get people together and also have something to keep them coming back. And I think competition is a good way to do that. Matt Whiting says, I've already tried starting a weekly meet in our park. Sadly, it's Canada here and too cold for most people, but it's getting there. Awesome. Well, keep us in the loop as it warms up. Lexi Nichelle, I've been spinning in public as well, but it can be scary. But people do tend to like it. I would check out that Amino app. Okay, so bookmark for this too, because yes, it's good to be out spinning in public, but there's an additional piece of this puzzle, and that's that it can't be just you. It's weird when you see just one person doing a thing, and there's some people that are brave and will walk up to you and ask you what you're doing, but by and large, one person is easy to ignore. Whereas if you've got a bunch of people all together for a spin jam in a public area, that's a very different story. Somebody wants to know, what do these people have in common? How can I become a part of that group? That is a big part of the key. Cool. My Awkward Life. I don't want to link to it without Drex's permission. So after the live stream is done, My Awkward Life, add it to the comments under this video, because I think that they're going to try and keep you from adding links in the chat here, which sucks. But for anybody who's watching this live stream after the fact, go check out the links in the comments. And My Awkward Life, please stick a link down there in the comments. Justin Blanchard, for a Poi competition, what are some examples of what to be judged on? Again, I think that this is like way too deep in the weeds. I think that, you look at other competitive sports like skateboarding and figure skating and everything, and you kind of get some guidelines as to what to do. But what we really need to do is just like do the competitions and figure out how we're incentivizing different types of spinning in them. Like I've seen one competition that they do at PEX every year with hooping, and they grade on some things like overall flow, technical ability, musicality, athleticism, dance, things like that. I mean, I think that those are all good things to think about, but I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at sports that are kind of similar to what we do, and I don't think that we need to have a specific grade for playing control or anything like that. I think that is kind of going to be found buried in other things. Part of how this works is that you want to have people who are authorities on a particular pursuit, judging it and looking at it and looking at the people that are doing it, to kind of put their stamp on what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. I think part of that winds up in the judging, honestly. My Awkward Life, I don't think it's letting me link it. I'm not surprised. Leave a link in the comments below after the live stream is done, please. Ash and Fire. I stand in the lobby wide hallway of my office and practice on my breaks, and there are always lots of people who talk to me about it. Visibility is a good thing. Yes, it is. One of the other girls is interested in having a fun poi team at the office. We already have access to a gym and such and have a fantastic team mindset. Yes, do it. Make it happen. Perfect. Let's see here. Matthew Whiting. So what I did on eBay, I bought a bunch of sets of poi for around $5 a pair. They aren't amazing quality, but it's a great chance for people to try and pick it up, and I've even given them to people. That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. Whenever you start a spin jam, always make sure that you got extra props for people to pick up and try out. 100%. Ryan Olson, and do you think that a routine is necessary? That takes away the flow aspect of it. It would have to be some standardized somehow. I don't think that it's an either-or proposition. I think that, like, if you look at the video that I did back in December on the choreographic technique of blocking, I show how it's possible to choreograph a routine and build in some structured improv into it. There's absolutely ways that you can standardize a routine but still leave room for yourself to improvise. So I don't think that those two things are an either-or proposition. I think we can do both. My awkward life. So I'm currently trying to learn stalls with my DIY sock poi. The weight is rice, and it's loose in the sock. Could that be stopping me from getting the move, or am I just a baby? So let me grab my own sock poi to kind of talk you through this here. So my own sock poi here have contact juggling balls in the ends, which don't quite move exactly the same way as your rice, but are similar enough that I think we get the picture of what I'm talking about here. So whenever you do a stall, and especially things like up stalls, quite frankly, the head and the poi should be moving as one kind of continuous unit, you know? I do feel a little bit when doing up stalls that there's a little bit of a moment when the ball kind of shifts in the end of the poi if I pull it very rapidly, if I try and change the direction of the poi before it's completely stopped. But by and large, you should feel as though the masses of the two are the same. One thing that might be messing with you is if your sock is stretchy. Stretchy socks will absolutely mess with your stalls. And it's one of the reasons that I tend to prefer non-stretchy fabrics for my sock poi overall. And you might find that spinning with less, you might find that spinning with less stretchy material might help. Now, while I'm on that topic, I'm also going to give you guys a life hack for getting better at your stalls. That is, you should have an extremely light set of poi to practice your stalls with. Why is that? Wow, this is tangled up. Hang on just 1 second. The joys of live streaming. Not at all, but that's okay. Okay. So having poi that weigh almost nothing makes stalls incredibly difficult because in changing the momentum of the poi, if there is very, very little mass to control the momentum of the poi, then you're going to find that moving the inertia back and forth is going to be exceptionally difficult. Drill your stalls with the lightest set of poi that you can find. I'm using a set of spin balls poi right here, which are extremely, extremely light. You can also do something just as simple as taking a simple rope and tying a knot in both ends. And even though the knot doesn't weigh that much, it will totally accomplish this. So when you practice doing your stalls, and if you can get them super clean with a very, very light set of poi, then when you move to a heavier set of poi, like say a set of contact poi or fire poi, then goodness gracious me, those stalls are going to be absolutely flawless. Yeah? So drill those stalls with the lightest set of poi that you can find, and you are going to find yourself so incredibly clean when you switch to a heavy set. So incredibly clean. Cool. All right, getting through the questions here. Also, I keep forgetting to say this, but if any of you guys want to help support the work that I'm doing and support the channel, you can help me out by using that super chat function. You can send me $1 or $2, and it helps the channel immensely. So thanks in advance to anybody who wants to help me out like that and help out the channel like that. Cool. So Skate Zara says, "Saludos de Costa Rica. Soy tu fan." Hola, ¿cómo está? I speak a little bit of Spanish. Unfortunately, not enough to like do a complete video in Spanish, which would be a really fun exercise. Yeah, but I like to pull it out every once in a while. Matthew Whiting, having a routine is a great way to flow. Very rarely do. I just focus on tech spinning. Having a routine can engage with an audience differently than just doing tech. I totally agree. And it requires a kind of discipline that I think is very, very good for flow artists in general, and that unfortunately we very rarely engage in. So I am pro routine, most definitely. My awkward life. Oh, my socks are very stretchy. There's your problem. See if you can switch to something that is not as stretchy, and I bet you anything you'll find that those stalls are a lot easier. Ryan Olson, I agree, was just touching on competition based upon routine requirements. Yeah, I honestly like having sections in a routine that you can improvise in is not that difficult. And honestly, like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if you do have a routine that you work through. It's one of those things that if we're looking for virtuosity and athleticism, it's much easier to prepare around a moment of virtuosity or athleticism that you know is coming. And then sometimes you can improvise it around it, Shaun White's gold medal winning snowboard run was entirely improvised. He has other runs that he's done that were more or less choreographed, that he practiced many times. And, his interview after he won gold, he was talking about how the back-to-back 1440s that he did, he'd only ever done that once before in competition. Oh my God, what the hell? So yeah, like, having a routine is good, and sometimes having a routine can prepare you for doing really incredible moments of improvisation like that. Like frickin' Shaun White, for the love of God. Okay. Matthew Whiting, and I think if it became mainstream enough for Olympics, I think a routine would be almost mandatory. I'm inclined to agree. I think, it could be one of those things that it turns into something like figure skating, like you're required to have specific elements in it, or not, I don't know. I think that, like, we need to start having the competitions and we need to figure all that out. Like, right now, we're kind of conjecturing based upon nothing. Like, we've never seen what flow arts competitions look like, so it's really, really difficult to kind of forecast what comes out of that. I think we just need to do the thing and make mistakes and be sloppy and figure out how we're going to make them better in the long run, I think that's the biggest thing we need to do is just get started on it. Matthew Whiting, and all in all, I just think it's more fun to dance around with my moves. And I love dancing around with my moves too. I absolutely do. To help, Ashen Fire, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. I really, really appreciate that. If you have any other questions, please shoot them into the comments, and I will jump them to the top of the queue, which granted is only a single comment deep at this point, but yeah. Ash of the T-Rex. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for the super chat, Ashen. Let's see here. Justin Blanchard says, to help out my awkward life and keep it cost-effective, Nick Woolsey uses a hair tie or a single knot about halfway down the sock poi. Also reduces aerodynamic resistance. Yeah, also, oh wow, and a $5 super chat from Ryan Olson. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. How cool. Another tip. So you can very easily, so this is a less soft brand of poi. Here, let me grab one of these real quick. I haven't used these in forever, but So this here is a type of poi that is very cheap and easy to make, um, and that fixes the problem of not being stretchy, and also is fairly light depending upon the materials that you use to build it. I've heard these referred to as French hippie poi because evidently this was a thing that started off amongst French poi spinners. But basically what you do is you go down to your local bike shop and you ask them if they have any punctured inner tubes that they're throwing out, and they'll be happy to like pass them on to you. They're going to throw them out anyway, so they don't really care. It's not like they don't really recycle these. There are some other countries that do recycle inner tubes that take the old inner tubes and use them to create patching materials for new inner tubes, but most U.S. shops are just throwing these out and will be happy to give them to you. You take them home. You cut them open. So basically, you cut them in half so that they become a tube rather than a donut, and then you cut them down the length so that they become a big strip of rubber. You wash them out to get all of the kind of tire crud out of them, and then you cut them in half. So you wind up with 2 strips. Now you take some rope and you measure out however long you want your rope to be, and it doesn't have to be that long. But you then wrap one of those strips around the rope, like you tie off a knot in it and everything, and then you tape it off when you're done. And this is a really, really, really cheap way that you can put together a set of practice poi that aren't stretchy and don't weigh a lot. And you can decorate them with like whatever color tape you want to and everything to try and make them a little bit more pretty. I left mine like more or less unfinished, but like you can cover them over with say some like electrical tape and then put some prettier tape like hoop tape on them or what have you. The only downside to these is that it's basically a solid mass of rubber, so they are not they're not soft, but that might help. Matthew Whiting, what's Super Chat? Is that a YouTube function? Yeah. Matthew, if you are not on mobile, that's the key. If you're watching this on your desktop or what have you, then in the chat, right below where it says say something, there are 2 little icons. One of them is a smiley face that's used for emoji, and the other one is a square with a $sign on it, and that's Super Chat. And you can use that to basically tip me in the channel if you so choose. I don't think you can do it on mobile though, which is super annoying. But yeah, that's what Super Chat is. And yes, it is a YouTube function, and I'm really glad that YouTube implemented it because it's a great way for me to be able to connect with you guys. So yeah, that is French hippie poi in a nutshell, and that is how you can get yourself a very, very, very inexpensive set of practice poi that will not stretch on you. Because if you're making sock poi, I'm assuming that you're a little bit on a budget here. Oh, Ryan Olson is on mobile and was able to do Super Chat. Ryan, that's awesome. If you could include instructions on how to do that, because I tried doing it once. I tried doing it once on mobile in another live stream that I was watching, but it wouldn't. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So it looks like there's a lot of people that are looking at how to do this on mobile. So Ryan, if you could tell everybody how you did that, that would be fantastic. Joshua Tonks, what do you usually do with the slack when the heads have a V-shaped string from one side to the other and the tether? Wow, this is specific. When the heads have a V-shaped string from one side to the other and the tethers are too long, but you don't want to cut off the string, but the slack is too long. V-shaped string from one side to the other. Okay, so let me see if I am understanding this properly. So, are you talking about cases like here with these spin balls, where I have a little kind of rope that's going through the head that the tether is then attached to? Is that what you're talking about? Because if so, the way you change the length on something like that is usually you've got like a capture knot on it, and you pull out the capture knot and adjust the length of it wherever you want it to be, and then you slide back the capture knot. And sorry for those of you who are like, "What are you talking about, capture knot?" This is just a standard slip knot. And then there's two ways you can go about it. You can either like tie up a bunch of the excess and burn it off, or you can do the sloppy option, which is just to keep on tying knots until the excess is all sorted. You know, something like that, which doesn't look that pretty, but yeah. So that is how that's how you can take care of some of that slack. Just like that, but I don't want the slack going back because it gets caught in orbitals. Ah, yes, orbitals. That is a bit of a challenge. Ryan Olson says, Super Chat is connected to your Google account. You have to have your card on file with your phone, and then it will give you the option with the same $sign near the chat box. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's helpful, Ryan. Thank you. Okay, Josh. So, to be perfectly honest with you, I think that you actually want to keep just a little bit of slack on here. I have it like halfway down the tether, and the biggest reason why is that slack, when you're doing orbitals, is actually a place where you can get the tethers to catch and hold together. If there's no point of friction anywhere along the line, then sometimes you can actually just slide completely out of the orbital. Let me see if this one has a matching pair right here. So you can see this one is a one where I have taken up all the slack in it and everything. And if I try and do an orbital with another poi that has all the slack taken up, such as this one right here, my orbital, you know, I can find that point, but I'm sliding most of the way down the tether before I get there. Whereas if I try and do this with a pair of poi that don't have the slack completely taken care of, then that knot becomes the point at which the poi catch and go into an orbital, yeah? But then they kind of slide down, and that's ugly. So, yeah, the alternative then is just to cut your tether right at the side of the capture knot and tie another knot to get rid of it, and use a lighter to melt the whole thing into into a solid mass, and that will do the trick for you. Yeah, cool. Matthew Whiting, thanks Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Yes. My awkward life. Oh, I just remembered the links for the amino expires after so long. Is that going to be a problem? I do not know. I do not know. Try it. Let's see. If not, like, if there's a generalized link to sign up, that might be the one to include. But if there's not, then, yeah, just include the link as it is, and if it expires, it expires. Oh, well. S.J. Sorman, where could I buy it? Buy what? I need some context here. Are you talking about spin balls? Spin balls are available at spinballspoi.com. And they're good guys, so you should support them. Yeah. And also, if you want to support the channel, anybody who's watching and has access to the super chat function, you know, you can support the channel by using super chat. You can send me $1 or $2, and it really helps out the channel. Thank you so much in advance. Cool. Sweet. I want to wrap this up within about the next 15 minutes here. So keep on sending me those questions for the next 15 minutes, and I will do my best to answer them. I know that a lot of this live chat has consisted of some very, very dry information about how sporting federations are created and everything, but I kind of wanted to come at this from the perspective of, you know, if we were serious about this, then what is the first step? And the first step is creating those organizing bodies. Yeah. So. Send me them questions, send me them questions, send me them questions, please and thank you. And in the meantime, I'm going to grab a sip of water because it is good for my voice. And also no problem, and that's just kind of what I figured out, by the way, because it let me do the super chat, and that's the only reason I could see for it working. Okay. Yeah, ironically enough, like I said before, I've tried doing live YouTube streams with other people that I watch and everything, and I couldn't access it, and I don't know why, but I will look into that now. Joshua Tonks, latency like 12 seconds both ways. I am not surprised, because technology is great, but at the same time, it does not always move at the speed of technology, if you catch my drift. Yeah. So yeah, keep them questions coming my way, pretty please, pretty please, pretty please. And my ring light is pretty much dead. Ah, Lexi Nichelle, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. She says, I really appreciate all that you do. I really appreciate all that you do too, Lexi. That is a big help. CKWay Zombie, I just started Poi again, and I was wondering, would recording my progress on YouTube be a good idea? I think that would be a fantastic idea. The biggest reason being that you are not going to notice your progress as it happens, because it is going to be, it's like the boiling frog problem. Like you stick a frog in a pot and you start the water boiling, and the frog won't know that there's a problem until it gets to be too much. Whereas you drop a frog in a pot of boiling water and it instantly knows that there's a problem. That's a terrible metaphor for practice, but it's true. As you're going through the process, you never see the ways that you're growing as an artist, but if you have recordings to go back to and review, then yes, it is a great tool for showing you how far you've come, and that can be a great incentive for continuing to push forward and for showing you just that you're capable of doing this thing. So yes, I highly recommend recording your progress. Whether you do it on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of these are good options. All these are good options. My awkward life. So I think I have asked all my questions, but I just want to say that you're the main reason I'm in Flow Arts today. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you. I am only as good as my audience, so thank you guys for tuning in and for supporting me in that way. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, keep them questions rolling. Libby Perry says, do the questions have to stick to topic, or are we allowed to ask off-topic questions? Ask me anything that you want, Libby. I will give you the one proviso that I gave everybody at the beginning of this chat, which is that I'm injured currently. I sliced open my thumb actually exactly a week ago tonight, and I nicked an artery, and my thumb is still recovering. I've got the wound has been sealed back shut, but at this point I have some pretty bad tendinitis in it, so I can't bend it very much without getting some pretty intense pain. So if it starts to hurt, I'm going to stop spinning, so just FYI. Matthew Whitting, don't really have any questions, but these kind of videos are great. The Flow Arts is incredibly small in my city, pretty much just me, but I like how these videos touch on other aspects. I'm glad to be of help if I can. Yeah, so keep up the good work, and see if you can get some meetups with your Flomies. See if you can get a bunch of people together. And these things become chain reactions. The more, it's like a human Katamari ball. The more people you get, the more people you pull in. Ryan Olson says, so I'm having trouble with Zan's Diamond on like the second half of the trick. Any quick tips? On the second half. Okay. If you could throw in the chat which timing and direction of Zan's Diamond are you working on? Because the tips are slightly different depending upon which timing and direction combination you're shooting for. I can give just generalized tips right now while you're working on that, if other people want to hear it as well. So then, if we are talking about Zan's Diamond in Together Same, then when you reach this, so 9 times out of 10, when you reach the second half of Zan's Diamond, the thing that's going to noodle your noggin the most is that all of the directions for the first half of Zan's Diamond are flipped over on their side right now, yeah? So if I'm doing the top of Zan's Diamond, I am thinking, because I'm mirroring you guys right now, I'm thinking left, right, up, and down, yeah? Now when I switch to the bottom half of Zan's Diamond, I have to switch all that. So instead of going left, right before I go up, I now have to think right, left. So a trick that you can keep in mind for that is just to flip it on its side. What was the last thing I said? I will repeat again. Left, right. So right was the last one I said, so I have to hit right again. Right isn't coming out of it, yeah? And together opposites, likewise, I think of this as being like you start from the top and you go open, crossed, up. So when I get down, the last one I said was crossed, so I have to go back to cross once again before I go to open, yeah? Sure enough, if I start at the top, it's open, crossed, up, down, crossed, open, down, and then back up, right? It also works for split time opposites. If I start with my left hand up top, I will go left, up, right up. Now from here, I go right, up, left up, yeah? So it's all about flipping the directions when you hit the second part of Zan's diamond. It's a little bit of a difficult kind of mental gymnastics thing. There's a couple things that I like to give people as tricks for doing that. Some people have troubles remembering the order, and there's a few techniques for getting through that. One of those techniques is actually just to practice moving your hands through it. So like with my this is actually my right hand, but I'm mirroring you guys, so it'll be my left hand. I will think, left, right, up, down, right, left, down, and then back to up, yeah? And I'll just keep drilling that over and over again until the movement feels like second nature to me. An alternative is to write it down. That is to write down the directions over and over again in a notebook. Some people, like for some reason, the act of writing it down is what triggers them to remember the pattern. It's interesting, I've run across quite a number of people teaching my workshops who they have to write it down in order to get it. So you might be one of those people. So those would be the big three things that I would keep in mind, is on the second half of Zan's diamond, you're reversing the directions from the first half. Number two, try just drilling the pattern with your hands alone and without the poi in your hands. And number three, if none of those things work, grab a sheet of paper and write out the directions over and over again to try and build it into your brain and memory. Yeah, those would be my tips. Cool. Oh wow, there's a lot of questions now. Cool. Joey Harper, do you know if anyone making LED mods to Lantern Smith's OVO palm grips yet? Not yet. I don't know of anybody who's doing it yet, but I would be shocked if it didn't happen. There's so much room inside the OVOs that it would be really silly not to come up with some LED inserts for it. Worst case scenario, honestly, you can take the inserts, the Illumigrips inserts that Sheridan Miller makes at Protobeam, his Etsy shop. You can throw those into the bottom of a set of OVO grips and they'll fit. They just don't take up the entire cavity, but they will totally fit. Yeah. Libby Perry, I'm very sorry. Hope you feel better soon. So do I. It's on the mend. It's a lot better than it was. I functionally couldn't use my right hand for a good 3 or 4 days, which was a really interesting exercise to find out all the things that my left hand is capable of doing. But yeah, I'm able to use my right hand for most tasks again. And again, the biggest problem right now is just that it's stiff, and if it's not properly warmed up, I get some sharp pains out of it. Are you going to be at Playthink in June? No, I'm not. I'm sitting out most of the festival season. I've been confirmed for 2 festivals, or rather 3 festivals at this point. And it's literally just because they made me offers that were so good that I couldn't say no. Flame Festival I work at, I will be at in April. I will also be at Equilibrium in September. They're doing a flowers competition. I can't wait to check out and see how they do it. And number 3 is that there's a new festival in Taiwan that I'm going to be teaching at in August, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, that's where you'll be able to find me this year. Matthew Whiting. Dude, I'm still stuck on spiral wraps. The props never manage to wrap around my head. They usually just miss them altogether. So here's my hack for spiral wraps, and that's that you try to do them on an angle. Look at it from the side how I'm doing it here, which normally I can do it off of a vertical plane. But for people I know that are struggling with keeping them on your hands, one of those things that you can do is start with something more like a corkscrew and try and do the spiral wrap on an angle so gravity is helping you out. Make it so when the poise start to slip and fall, they slip onto your hands rather than off. And then, of course, you can get them off the standard way just by flicking your wrists. Another thing to watch out for is as you're doing spiral wraps, if you find that there's a direction that the poi are slipping off your hands at, like say, notice that as I'm doing them right here, I'm going to have my poise slipping off towards the right. It means that the poi plane is slightly off from where my hands are, and I need to point my hands in the opposite direction. So if they slip off to my right, I need to point my hands more to my left, and that will fix the problem with that. Yeah? So those are the two tips that I can give you on how to clean up your spiral wraps. Yeah, and that's for everybody. If you guys are having trouble with your spiral wraps, those are two great hacks to get them down. Yeah. Justin Blanchard, I'm wanting to teach people poi who are completely new to the art. The problem I'm having is the massive amount of variety of information and how to teach the same moves. How do you simplify? So I'm in the process of actually working on that right now. I have a class that I am offering in the DC area that is based upon completely throwing out the standard way that I see most people teach poi, which is, starting with, okay, here's plane control, and here's wall plane, and wheel plane, and all that, and, here's butterfly and a 3-beat weave. My students aren't playing around with that at all. What we're playing around with instead is we're starting with timing and direction, and I'm having them move with timing and direction. That is, like, I'm having them learn timing and direction with their hands, and as they're moving with their hands, learning how to turn and move their entire bodies as their hands are doing all the different timing and direction combinations. What I'm doing then is I'm putting poi in their hands, but I'm writing out pieces of choreography that use the things that they've learned in class that day to reinforce it. And thus far, the feedback has been very, very positive. So, I'm experimenting with it right now, and I'll let you know how that turns out. Yeah. Manipulous Monk, I have a relevant link to share on the subject so that we may educate ourselves in the current judgment criteria and different levels of rhythmic gymnastics. Awesome. I cannot enable link sharing in the chat. What you can do is after the chat is done, leave it as a link in the comments of this video. That's the best I can offer. Matthew Wedding, just got to keep working on OK plane control. It's important. Ryan Olson says split time up. Do you mean for Zan's Diamond? Let me know if I answered your question, Ryan, because I did cover split up in there. Manipulous Monk, Justin Blanchard, it's all a matter of branding. Many names currently exist. This is a witty joke, but take it seriously. Even the common VTG we know is not just the native tongue. Also runs tutorial series for poi movement. He separates schools of thought and elements, which is completely unrelated to current teachings. Yeah, I haven't seen the way that Ronan is currently teaching it, but yeah, that is very different. Brian Olson says, thank you, man. Literally just wrote all that down. Yes! Cool, I answered your question. Fantastic. Joey Harper, sweet. Thanks, man. Manipulous Monk, most importantly, know that what you're teaching is bodily proper. Are you teaching a move that looks cool that is destroying your shoulders, or are you actually teaching proper form? Teach mindfully. The one pin I'm going to stick in that is, in a lot of cases, we don't actually know what proper form is for some of these moves. There are a lot of people that have done things that they claim are proper form and still come down with shoulder problems. I had no training in my technique whatsoever as I was learning to spin poi. I've been doing it for 10 years and I've never had a problem with my shoulders. I don't know. I think some people are more prone to it than others, and I also think that we are a young enough art form that we're still figuring out kind of the kinesthesiology of it. Yeah. One thing I will say though is I think it's a good idea to warm up your shoulders and arms before you spin. Move your arms around in the socket a bit, because if they haven't moved in a little while, the sockets can dry out and you can get more friction in the socket than you really want, and that can grind down the joint. So move around your arms and your sockets and your shoulders very gingerly for a few minutes before you start to spin to get the sockets lubricated again, and that definitely helps keep from grinding down your shoulders. Yeah. Matthew Whiting, thanks for the hack. I'll give it a try. Outstanding. Lexi Nichelle, how do you hold the poi so that you can have it wrap flat in your palms. So I grip my poi between my thumb and index finger like this, and I sandwich my hands like this, which I refer to as the turtle when I do my spiral wraps. I have my thumbs going out to the sides and both of my palms pointing down towards the ground. When a lot of other people use what I call the prayer grip, where they put their hands together like in prayer, like both of their thumbs are pointing up and everything, and the two poi wrap around them. I think the prayer grip is easier if you have finger loops, but it's not always necessarily the case. I just find that the turtle grip is easier for me. Yeah, it's just a matter of preference. Warren Woodruff, hey, you released a video on your top 3 behind the back moves, and I'm struggling with the 5-beat weave, that extra twist. Yeah, that extra twist is a little bit of a there's a little bit to unwrap in there, isn't there? So I'll give you a little bit, and I will also tell you that so I have a video series over at my my learning site at learn.drexfactor.com that includes an entire segment about behind the back tricks that might be able to help you out and everything. And that course is it's available for a limited time for a low price while I'm figuring out the platform and everything. So I would say one of the things to do, check that out. But I will also show you a little bit about that twist, which is that, so you can practice pantomiming this with your arms, how usually when you're doing it behind the back waist strap, you kind of have your right hand go around your left. Now the trick here is that you're going to keep on twisting so that your right hand is now pointed up and your left hand is pointing down. So from here to here, which sucks, not a fun position to stay in, and then you unwrap it all behind your back. The other side, even more fun. Usually you think of it as your left hand going around your right, and you wind up in a place where you like left hand pointing up, left hand pointing down, right hand pointed up, and of course you keep on going until you reach your left hand around your right hand in this ungodly position right here. One of those really great tips that Nick Woolsey came up with a while back is to practice doing 5-beat weaves by like using your index fingers on each of your hands to kind of figure out where you're going on each beat of the weave. Doing that with a behind the back waist strap is also really helpful for finding those moments of twist. I will also say that when I do the behind the back 5-beat waist strap, this is Leo here, who wants to cuddle. You know, one side is vastly more comfortable for me than the other, which is to say, the side on my right side, right here, the left side one, not as comfortable. But yeah, you use the finger trick, I would say. That's the best tip I can give on that one. And also just like know that you're going to contort yourself in all kinds of crazy ways. And that's just the way that it goes. Cool, where are we at here? My Awkward Life. So you said we could ask any question and have a good one. What's your favorite type of cake? Mint chocolate. It's what my mom always used to make for me on my birthday when I was growing up, and it is still my favorite. Fun story. Last year, I was in the Czech Republic for my birthday. The wonderful folks at Pyroterra and Light Toys flew me out to do some promo work for the new version 4 visual poi that they were releasing, and they have a festival out there called Polnav Plamenek. I speak a little bit of Czech. I used to live there real briefly back in my early 20s. And my first night there, like the language was not coming back to me very rapidly, and so that at this festival and everything, there was a night when they had me perform. And after I was done performing, they're doing their banter with the audience and everything, and they switched back over and they switched over to English for a second. It's like, okay, so I think it's time we let Drex know that we've been talking about him. I'm just like, what? So they brought me on stage and sang happy birthday to me. Bear in mind, I hadn't told them it was my birthday. My girlfriend was traveling with me, and apparently she had reached out to them weeks beforehand and told them, hey, our first night there is going to be Drex's birthday. And this is his favorite flavor of cake. If you can get a mint chocolate cake, he'll be really touched by that. And sure enough, they had a mint chocolate cake for me on the stage, and it was the sweetest thing. And I spent the rest of the night trying to get rid of it, because after like 1 or 2 slices of it, I was full. And it was a big cake. And I think we wound up taking the entire weekend to finish eating that. But yeah, that's my favorite type of cake, is mint chocolate. Libby Perry, bummer. I saw where they had listed you, and I was super excited to actually learn from you in person, but I completely understand. Maybe another time. Good luck on your journey. You might have been seeing the listing from last year. I taught at Playthink last year, but yeah. Diane Tuesta, whenever I introduce Poi Basics to others and they're looking to do more on their own, I usually share your YouTube page and definitely your 1-minute tutorials. Outstanding! That is so good to hear. Diane Tuesta says, thank you for contributing so much to the Flow community. You're the best. Aw, thanks, Diane. You're the best. Joey Harper says, awesome teaching concept. I see a lot of stiff poi spinners. Incorporating movement in the beginning is a great step. I hope so. Like I said, I'll get back to you guys and show you how it is, and show you how it worked for me, rather. Manipulous Monk has a link to Rhythmic Gymnastics handbook. Cool. Yeah, and if you can throw the actual link into the comments after I wrap up, which will be in just a minute here because I'm over time, that would also be awesome. Lexi Nichelle, I usually try the prayer and it falls off. I'll try the turtle. Thanks. My pleasure. Cool. So it is a little ways past where I'd originally intended to go here, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks to all of you guys for watching. If anybody wants to throw in a last-minute super chat to support the channel, that would be awesome sauce. If not, thank you all so much for... Hi, Theo. You want to come join me right now? No, you don't. Thank you so much for watching. And, yeah, I hope this gets some of you guys inspired to create some things out there, create some awesome community in your own particular world's macro life. Oh, that sounds amazing. Mint chocolate cake is really good. I agree. My favorite is red velvet, and because of that, my bro calls me an old lady because apparently that flavor is for old ladies. I disagree. Red velvet is a very close second to my love of mint chocolate. If mint chocolate were not an option, I would totally hit up red velvet instead. So if you're an old lady, I am too. Yeah, cool. Thank you, everybody. Have yourselves a great night. And again, I hope you take this information and use it to go do some good in your communities. Before I sign off, just 2 little notes. One is to thank the friends of the channel. That is Dark Monk, Amazing Lights, Flow Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to keep my channel alive and for helping to lend financial support to keep these videos coming out. And also a big thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon. If any of you guys would like to sign up to support the work that I do, Patreon is a voluntary subscription service. You can go there and sign up to support my channel for as little as $1 a month right now. And you get access to the content that I make a day before it is available to the rest of the general public. You get some awesome behind-the-scenes stuff. When I'm not sure of what direction to take a video in, I will sometimes post to my Patreon and ask my patrons to weigh in. I'll put polls out every once in a while to help me figure out what topics for videos I ought to tackle next and everything. It's a really good thing. And honestly, like, you know, I put out at least 8 videos a month. So, you know, if you were to sign up for $1, then you're effectively paying something like 12.5 cents per video, which is a great rate. And doing that is able to help me keep on doing this work and keep on putting these videos out to the general public for people all over the world to be able to learn from. So if you can sign up, I really appreciate it. And if not, that's totally cool too. Thank you either way for watching, and have yourselves a good night. Peace out, my friends.